Welcome to the Page Turnerz podcast, where book lovers unite to celebrate the enchanting world of fiction. With your host, Paul A. Brooks. In each episode, we'll dive into the captivating realms of storytelling, exploring the pages that transport us to magical places and introduce us to unforgettable characters. In each episode, we'll embark on a creative expedition through the minds of seasoned and emerging writers to unravel the mysteries and unveil the passion that fuels their stories. Join us on this odyssey through the pages and pixels of imagination, where words become worlds and stories illuminate our lives. So, pour yourself a coffee and immerse yourself in discussions about writing, gripping plots, heroes and villains, and the sheer joy of escaping into a well-crafted story.
On today's show, I had the pleasure of speaking to Tommy Lee Sexton, a pastor with a fascination for superheroes and science fiction. Now, one of the things I asked him about was if there was a conflict between his beliefs and writing sci-fi. He gave a great answer and talked about his message in his fantastic books. This is Tommy Lee Sexton. Hi, Tommy Lee, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming today. It's a real pleasure to meet you.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Listen, it's great, as we said a moment ago, before off camera, it's great to speak to another sci-fi writer. I've spoken to a few, but it is really nice to speak to a kindred spirit, so to speak.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know, and you're a martial artist as well, a fellow martial artist. So we've got those two things in common. So.
Oh, really? I didn't realize. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to ask you about your jiu-jitsu anyway, as we kind of go through. But you live in South Carolina, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So I'm just going to compare South Carolina weather with UK weather. I'm just looking out the window here. It's nice and grey. It's almost warm, and it looks like rain. How's it look for you?
It is incredibly sunny, and the sky is completely blue. But in South Carolina, wait 5 minutes and it completely changes sometimes.
Yeah. See, I hate it already. Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you, do you write full time?
No, I write whenever I have time. But I'm actually a full-time pastor at a small church.
Okay.
In our small town. Actually, we live in a town of about 700,
Wow.
which is interesting because I'm originally from New York, so that has never been my population. Usually, it's cluttered and everything. And the coolest thing for me is it's a very rural town. So right across from my office, if I look out, there is a huge pen of goats.
Oh,
That
lovely.
is church members, and so we chat, me and the goats, once in a while.
Yeah, I should try that. I might make more sense out of with the conversations. That sounds lovely. I mean, I imagine 700 people in an entire town. That's probably fewer than you had in a block in New York, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. And I really, it's interesting because I really love it. I really do. Just because there's a community feel. You see people and you wave to them because you know who they are.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I suppose as well, as a writer, there is that sort of craving for sort of solitude, to get lost in your story. And I suppose that's quite difficult in New York as opposed to where you are now. So you write sci-fi, and particularly young adult sci-fi.
Mhm.
Was there any reason that you chose that particular subgenre of sci-fi anyway? I mean, I love speculative fiction, which is a huge umbrella term for loads of stuff. But young adult sci-fi, what was the appeal for that?
I think I've just really always enjoyed it. I mean, growing up, reading books like Animorphs, watching shows like Power Rangers,
Right. Yeah.
they really just connected with me. So you see the kids and the teenagers that are just like you, and then they're becoming superheroes and all that. And so that really just stuck with me. And I continually, I read, my wife and I really like reading young adult, just because we like the imaginative nature and the idea of, you're young, you're a teenager, and you're going through all these different crazy things, and then poof, you find out XYZ related to aliens, or you're actually an alien, or you're actually a superhero or whatever. And it's just really exciting. And I got the idea for my book I Have Destiny when I was in about 7th grade.
Wow.
And so by default was kind of going to be YA because that was the idea. But yeah,
Mm.
I just like the idea of being able to have the characters grow up in the midst of some sort of crazy sci-fi thing that hits them.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
Fantastic. So here's a question for you then. So as a pastor, how does your belief, your faith, um, compare to your science fiction imagination? Do they clash? Does one argue with the other?
No, no, not really. Not at all. What my books are not written as, Christian fiction,
Hmm.
but the themes, if you're a Christian, if you're aware of, Christian themes like redemption, they're definitely in the book. And when I, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, it's, these guys got out of this situation. Well, God worked them through it.
Yeah.
In back, it's not in the story itself, but yeah, I don't see them clashing at all. I'm a big proponent that I don't think ultimately science and faith have to be in like constant conflict, and certainly not science fiction and faith either.
No, no, I'm sure, absolutely. So, do you have? So you said, I mean, obviously you're really busy, and you said you don't write full time. But when you do find time to write, you said, do you have a sort of specific routine that you kind of work through? And another question, and I'll ask everybody this: are you a plotter or a pantser, or somewhere in the middle?
It's a good question. So, as far as writing, it's kind of whenever I get time. Usually, it's afternoon, evening, or on a day off, and I write best in a coffee shop.
Oh wow.
Um, I used to write at Starbucks all the time when we lived in Georgia before moving to South Carolina.
Mhm.
And in a small town, got here, there wasn't a coffee shop at the time, and then one opened a few months ago, which has been great. So I've been writing up a storm there.
Love it.
But yeah, there's something about being able to get out of the house, have a nice caffeinated drink. I actually don't drink coffee; I drink tea. So I'm glad they serve tea too. Um,
You should be British.
well, sometimes I wonder.
Yeah.
I am part Welsh,
Right.
my mother,
Okay.
so but
That's close enough. Yeah.
close enough, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I just like doing that, and I kind of my imagination just fades away. Everything else fades away, and I'm just typing away. Normally, what I'll do a lot of time is I will go over like scenes that I've written before and edit them, and then move into the next scene,
Right.
um, which is kind of good, kind of bad because sometimes I just get stuck
Yeah.
without anything new. Um, as far as plotting and pantsing, it's interesting. The first book right there, it was basically I just write whatever comes to mind, whatever I've been dreaming about, thinking about. This second one, because I have, a structure in mind of where we're actually going, because I have this um kind of a 3 book, 4 book arc. I've tried to outline more.
Hmm.
Um, it sort of works, sort of doesn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. I'm kind of awful at plotting. I'm very much down the pantser scale, like you. My first book just kind of poured out of me, really. And the second one, I think, as you said, your first book almost gives you the direction for the second one.
Yeah.
It certainly makes it easier to continue on with the story. So perhaps in that respect, it's less pantsery, the second book, as
Yeah.
opposed to the first one, because you have that almost guidance from the previous book. And that, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with it. So you said there are more books in the series because this is your first one. Eye of Destiny is
Yes.
the first one, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. It's the first one. I'm working on the second, so
Okay.
hopefully it'll come out. It took me 10 years to write this one.
Ah, right. So you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask. Absolutely. Okay.
But and my excuse is that I started writing it right after I got married, and then we had 2 kids. I graduated from seminary. We moved twice, so I had a lot of starting and stopping in between.
Yeah.
Uh,
Life
the
kind of
second one,
gets in the way.
the second one's already moving a lot quicker.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So you Eye of Destiny then, and you said you sort of had that festering away, fizzing away, not fizzing away, from the seventh grade. So, did you have the entire story already in there, or did you find that when you were that age that you had this kind of idea of for this story, and it kind of grew as you got older?
Yeah, it was a seed of an idea.
Mm,
And at the time, I wasn't thinking writing books or anything. I would write screenplays because I really enjoyed acting.
yeah,
I was into Star Trek and reading and looking at the scripts, and I wanted to be on Star Trek or whatever.
sure.
Um, so I would write like scripts and screenplays, and so it originally came out that way, where I'm just kind of coming up with ideas and thinking, oh, this would be such a cool television show or whatever. Um, and so the very basic concepts were there. Three brothers, their dad's got a secret organization, alien invasion. They're going to become super soldiers, superheroes. But that was basically it. And as I got into, as I grew up and then started to say, oh, maybe I could write this down as a book. That would be
Yeah,
fun. And
yeah.
originally I did it just for fun. I wasn't necessarily thinking of publishing, but just you know wanted to write it,
Mm,
and that's when things started to really develop. And what it is now is very different from the original idea.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Really, just the bare bones basics that are there, but
yeah. I
it's been
suppose.
fun to see it evolve.
Yeah, I was going to say, I suppose that's the pantser side of things, isn't it? I think evolution is part of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Your story grows, but I think from what you've kind of described is kind of a boy, every boy's dream, isn't it? Really, to be a superhero and all of that. Those kind of fantasies come along. So that's great that you've written a story that can relate to that sort of age group. So is it? I know it's young adult, but is it sort of for younger age group boys as well?
so I would say, there is a level of violence, and it's not, violent. It's not like rated R, but it's enough where I would say probably 12 and up would
Okay.
be the best, unless like, you're 10 and you're watching like Stranger Things or NCIS or whatever. Then you could probably handle
Yeah,
my
yeah,
book because it's nowhere
yeah.
near that level. But so yeah, I've had a number of adults read it too and enjoy it as well. So it's kind of 12 and up is what I would say.
That's great, and it's nice that you can kind of expand that age group just that little bit. And I think as long as the violence isn't too graphic, because unfortunately, with the way of the world now, that children are seem to be exposed to more and more unsavory things younger and younger these
Yeah,
days,
yeah.
which is one of those things. But I suppose if you can expose them to it sensibly, let's put it that way,
Right.
then that's perhaps not quite so bad. I mean, even though I was thinking back to my childhood when I grew up in the 1970s, 60s, and 70s, I just was not exposed to any of that kind of stuff. And I think social media and modern technology
Oh
has
yeah.
got an awful lot to do with that.
Unfortunately, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, exactly right. So, when you sit down to write, do you just write in a coffee shop now, or do you have because it looks like you got a great office behind you.
Actually, this is my living room.
Ah, fantastic. Okay.
I just like being surrounded by books.
Yeah, I know what you
Um,
mean. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's just, kind of for me, it's just sitting down and writing. And I actually I've started even just to get more time. My son does karate. And so when he's in his class, I have my laptop in front of me and I'm writing in
right.
between watching him.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah,
Yeah, I do karate as well. So that's kind of my thing. That's fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
That's really good. I have tried. I mean, I my daughter last year was working in a country estate home, called Castle Ashby near where we live, and I had the opportunity to write there in a kind of almost medieval setting. It was
Oh
absolutely
wow.
stunning, and the weather
Yeah.
was nice for a change here, and yeah, it was really good. I got lots of work done sitting outside and writing, but that's really kind of the only time that I've done it. I'm hoping to do that again this year because it is so nice to be able to do it. When you write, do you have specific goals? Do you have a word count, or a page count like Stephen King or something like that, or do you just write till you're done?
I write till I'm done. I write until my hands get tired or I need to come home,
Right.
basically.
Yeah,
Um,
brilliant.
yeah, and that's just always how it's been. It's like I'll get as much done as I can, and sometimes it's nothing new gets written. I've just added different pieces or to stuff I'd already written, and other times it's like we have a bunch of new scenes that have just flowed out.
Yeah.
Um, and to me, it's less pressure that way.
Hmm.
Um, I just for me, writing has always been a stress reducer. And so if I'm kind of gonna put like, okay, you have to get this much done, it starts becoming more of a job than it is an unwinding. Because that's really it for me is, if I'm having a stressful day or it's been a stressful week or whatever, if I can go and write for a few hours, it's a complete release for me.
That's
Um,
great.
and so like I have like, okay, I want to have 100 pages written by such and such a date or whatever, but that's the most as far as goal setting I've done.
That's fantastic. That's really nice. It's interesting that you use it to unwind because sometimes do you find then that because I want to talk to you about the editing process that you mentioned a moment ago in a minute because again it sounds quite similar to what I do. But do you find that when you're writing a scene, if you've written a scene, do you find that you have an emotional reaction to what you've written sometimes?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? And as the writer, because sometimes I sit back and I'll look at it and I go, God, did I really write that? And then sometimes I have to take that few minutes just to kind of let it settle and calm a little bit before I continue on. Do you have the same sort of feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because sometimes like I think one day, oh man, this is a great scene. I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst garbage I have ever written. I am the worst writer ever.
Yeah,
But then you have times where you go back and it's like, wow, this is amazing.
yeah,
I can't believe I wrote that. And it's that constant um kind of having to balance those things out.
yeah,
Uh, because yeah, I mean, I think every writer goes through that where they're like, oh man, this is garbage, this is trash. And chances are it's probably not. It just needs some polishing. Um, but we're artists. We take everything very deeply. Um, but yeah, I've definitely had those reactions, and even there are times when I'm feeling the emotions of my characters as well.
mm,
That sense of um, joy or that sense of despair, depending on where they are. Uh, for me, you talked about every kid's dream to be a superhero. For me, this is how I do it. I live vicariously through my characters, and so
absolutely.
I get to feel and experience what it's like to be that hero without having to have superpowers, which I don't have, unfortunately.
Although we do because we're writers. That's a superpower
Oh
as
yeah, that
well.
is a superpower. You're right.
Absolutely. So I want to talk to you about your editing because you kind of said that you go back over what you've written previously. Do you do that? Because I do that. I do that daily. So whatever I've written today, I will edit first, really hard tomorrow, almost kind of a line edit, really, more than anything else. And then I'll start writing the fresh stuff, the new scene or whatever after that. Do you do the same thing?
I have started doing that more and more.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily do it every time,
Yeah.
but I'll go over in my head a lot of times is when I'm falling asleep. Like, okay, what do we do next? Or oh, I should have put this in here, and so I'll go back to those scenes and rework them. Um, it really it sounds ridiculous, but it really just depends on the mood I'm in at the
Yeah.
time.
Well, no,
Like, do I
absolutely.
want to put? Do I? And sometimes too, it's do I have anything in my brain that I feel like I need to create right now? Because if I have a sense of writer's block or I'm like, I'm not sure what to do, going back, it's like, okay, I'm going to rework this stuff and hopefully eventually I'll figure out what to do
Yeah,
next.
yeah, yeah. Do you find then that when you kind of do go back over things and you are looking at it and you think, oh, that's awful, or you think, oh, that's really good. Do you find that sometimes, because I found actually today, I was rereading what I'd written yesterday, and I thought actually it's pretty good, but it doesn't fit. It's not right, so I had to cut it, and that was galling almost. I sometimes find that if I've got to cut out. a good chunk that I thought was really quite nice prose, nice and easy to read, almost lyrical. But you got to cut it. Sometimes I find that hard. Have you found the same?
Yeah, and I've definitely gotten better with just cutting stuff where I'm just like, okay, this is not going to work, or this is too much detail, or whatever.
Yeah,
I actually have a file for each book, or each thing I write, where I put all the deleted scenes, in case I'm like, oh, maybe this would work here, or maybe I could put it somewhere else.
yeah.
Maybe I can use it in a future, book or whatever. But yeah, it can be. Sometimes for me, I look at something and I'm like, no, this just didn't work, and it's easy to cut. Other times it's like, this is kind of nice. I
Yeah.
don't want it, but it doesn't work, or it's taking too much away from the pacing, or it's slowing things down,
Mm.
or it's just too much info or something like that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in terms of pacing. I think sci-fi tends to be sort of fast-paced anyway, doesn't it? It's less cerebral and more action and hard-hitting in a lot of cases, I think. But something else that I'm interested in talking to you about is music. I'll come to your martial arts shortly, but your music as well, because chapter one of Eye of Destiny starts with some lyrics. Did you write those? Because I know you've written a couple of songs for your characters. So I suppose really, do you have a passion for music and writing songs yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I love music. Actually, I have a CD that I came out with a very long time ago now. I think it was 2010. Yeah, I love music. I love writing music. I love singing music.
Yeah.
I don't play any instruments, which is kind of, one of those things where like, yeah, I wish I kind of would have learned, but oh well. But yeah, any of the songs in Eye of Destiny, they're original, and it's just those snippets, because it's all that was needed. I have the tunes in my head too and everything,
Yeah.
um, and
That's
I found it like a lot of fun because it really gets you into the head of the character, and you have that moment where you're in that scene where they're either listening to the song and remembering something, or they're writing a song, or they're overcoming a fear by performing
oh.
that particular song. And
Mm. So
so yeah.
do you have plans to do anything else with them? I mean, you said you've got them, you can hear the music in your mind to the lyrics. Have you got plans to record that at some point?
I don't. I do one of the songs, I can't remember which, I've kind of gone over in my head, and I'm like, you know what? I think I could expand this tune, and maybe at some point I'll, you know, record it, or my wife plays guitar, so maybe we can try to set it to music and maybe put
Yeah.
it up on YouTube or
And
something. But
the only reason I ask is because I think, people when they read your book and they've read your lyrics and they've perhaps got they maybe hear some music of their own in their own, because when you write a description of a character, you have a particular idea of what this person looks like, and then your reader has a different view, a different idea, which is absolutely fantastic. I love that. So it's really interesting that, if you've got a recording of how you hear it, and you've got that somewhere, whether it's on your website or whatever, wherever you decide to put it, that you've got something else to draw people into your story a little bit more. And I think, as you say, people love music. Do you listen to music when you write?
I don't actually. And part of it I think is because it's just distracting. But the thing with music though is I will hear songs. I actually have a whole playlist, um, that make me or inspire scenes where it's
Wow.
like, oh, I can see this as a character situation, or I can see so and so singing this, or this having to do with this situation.
Mhm.
So actually, not writing, but when I'm driving or whatever, and I have music on one of these, playlists, um, I'm dreaming and I'm daydreaming of things that the characters are dealing with.
Mhm.
So I don't listen to it when I write. I think it kind of just distracts me. But for planning and stuff and daydreaming, it's definitely very influential and very helpful.
That's really good. It's interesting that the one of the hardest questions that someone like me can ask a writer is, where do you get your ideas from? It's, as I said before, to somebody else, it's not the sort of thing that you buy on the shelves of a Walmart or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
However, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the dreams come from, or rather, the ideas come from your daydreams. I am exactly the same. I might all of a sudden be something will just trigger, and I will drift off, and I think, oh, that's a pretty good idea. And I've got notepads here, there, and all over the place, and the whiteboard behind me, of course.
Yeah.
And then I scribble notes down. I have to say, though, not very many of the ideas make it into the books, but I think it does give you some kind of inspiration. And again, a path to start on that you might end up going off on a tangent on, but it will bring you to your story and back to your story eventually. That's really so. Yeah, I think you're right. Daydreaming is probably the place where, well, certainly you and I get our stories from, and that's fantastic. What influences do you have then that perhaps would trigger a daydream? Do you have a particular sort of series or style or genre of books that you like to read, or films, etc., that sort of inspire you?
Um, so, kind of just growing up, Animorphs was actually the first series that I, as a kid, like devoured. I
Yeah.
think they started coming out when I was in third grade, and like I had um so many of them. Actually, Scholastic had like one of those things where they send you 3 books a month or
Ah,
something. It's like,
yeah.
it's the greatest thing ever when they'd come.
Yeah.
Um, but so Animorphs, I was and still am a huge Power Ranger fan, and so that just was always an inspiration. Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate, basically anything with the word star in it.
Already. Yeah.
And in reading just YA sci-fi, some fantasy stuff, um, those kind of things. And I'm blanking on like my favorite books now because that's what always happens when you get asked that question.
Absolutely. No, I won't put you on the spot. Yeah, they're all behind you. Yeah, I won't put you on the spot with that because I know exactly what you're talking about. But do you find interesting that that you just mentioned fantasy there? Do you find that that there is this kind of transition blending is probably a better word between sort of fantasy and sci-fi? There is an element of either in both.
A lot of the times, I will say mine is probably more straight sci-fi, but a lot of the time, yeah, when you're reading science fiction or when you're watching sci-fi shows, there's definitely that mix
Yeah.
because well, you think of Star Trek, it's like, okay, they have their starship, all their technology, and they have this weird sort of thing that they can't explain. I mean, Q, in Star Trek Next Generation, where he's just some godlike being. There's definitely fantasy there more than
Yeah.
sci-fi, at least
Yeah.
at his.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you consider some of the monsters that they encounter on various planets, that is classic fantasy stuff, isn't it? Really. That's really good. That I mean, because I like, and I was talking to who was I was talking to before? Sarah Jules, I think. And we were saying that there really isn't the only reason that we use genres, I suppose, is a way of categorizing and cataloging where books should go. But I think there is a lot of crossover. I mean, for example, in mine, you could even say some of the elements in my trilogy is horror. It is there is a lot of that in there, really. And there is some romance. There's certainly some thriller, suspense. That's all in there under this speculative fiction umbrella. So I just wonder whether or not genre is just a way of Amazon to catalog the books and put them somewhere. I don't know. Perhaps that's the way. It's interesting. Do you not listen to any kind of music or anything when you're writing now? Then, or do you just do it in silence?
I mean, not so much silence. I mean, there's coffee brewing in the coffee shop near me, and there are people walking. Actually, it's interesting. People will be having conversations, and I can tune them out. But I just and I work with music. Like when I'm writing sermons, when I'm at the office, I have music on. But for some reason, when it's creating a completely original story, I don't know if I just have not thought to do it or if it's just like it just doesn't work for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just never. I just always felt like it would be more distracting than anything.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have to admit that when I'm doing the editing process, like I was doing this morning, I do that in silence because what I will generally do is I will read what I've written, do a little bit of rewriting, then I'll check it for grammar and spelling and all of that sort of stuff, and then I'll put it into a piece of software that I've got. That's called Speechelo that you can buy. That is like a text to voice. So
Oh,
I
nice.
so I just paste it in there and have it read back to me. Um,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it really is. It's really good. So I kind of do three things while I'm editing, which is kind of it makes it a little bit of a slow process, but I find it much more accurate because I'm not overly keen on editing. I do find it a little bit stifling, but I understand it's a necessary evil. Um, so I kind of do it that way. So yeah, I mean, there's that standard recommendation, isn't it, that you should either read your work aloud to
Right.
use
Yeah.
you, but I much prefer to have it read to me. And this software, I mean, there's loads of text to speech software out there. I just happen to buy this one that I've used before. So I just paste it in there and have it played back. That's amazing. And it's amazing the things that you find. You know, the repetition of a word here and there, and you know,
Yes.
saying to things like that, those jump out at you. So I kind of do that. So I have to do that, the editing side in silence. But when I'm writing, and here's the thing, I listen to video games being played on YouTube on this screen that you can't see here.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, so I do that, and it is. I've actually got Days Gone on here at the moment. It's just a kind of an adventure game, really, a role-playing game, a post-apocalyptic kind of thing, which is fitting for what I'm writing. But I do
Yeah.
that. I did listen to music. I do have a playlist on YouTube, but I found that having a voice and an adventure running on it kind of spurs me on. So it's a little bit strange, I suppose, in that respect.
Not really.
But I suppose anything that makes it work, really, isn't it?
Exactly, right? It's like the adventure, is seeping into your brain so that you can create another adventure or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, and sometimes I'll catch something and I'll go, "Oh, what was that again?" So I'll just kind of play that back, and I think, as we were saying earlier on, that daydream element then comes in, and you can go, "Oh, that's nice," and you sort of start going off and finding another element to write about that way. So we ought to talk about Eye of Destiny, really. That's what you've got out now, isn't it? That's available on
Yep.
Amazon. So
Yep.
without giving too much, now I've read the first couple of chapters of it. As I said, I like the prologue that sets it up really nicely. And then chapter one starts with the lyrics for the song with Walker and his two brothers and his dad that then comes in, which is quite interesting. So talk to us about Eye of Destiny without giving too many spoilers away. Where does the story go?
So basically, the premise is these three teenage brothers discover that their dad is running a secret organization to stop an incoming alien invasion. But the problem is this alien invasion they're planning for, and they're planning to have, you know, four highly trained superhero, super soldier suit operators to stop these aliens. The aliens come way before they expect. Their intel's wrong.
Right.
And through a series of unfortunate or fortunate events, depending on how you look at it, it's not these highly trained people that put on these suits. It's the three brothers,
Right.
much to the chagrin of their father. Um, so, uh, and so it becomes just this whole idea of, how do they handle this? How do they handle living their regular lives where their town is besieged? But the main alien, whose name is Rain, he's the prince of the Acronian Empire. I should speak this.
Empire is good. I like Empire.
Uh, and they find out that he's seeking this thing called the Eye of Destiny, and it's an ancient alien artifact that basically can bend reality to his will. What he wants, he gets. And there's this in the midst of all of this fighting and back and forth and him attacking and them defending, is this search for this object, because if he gets it, it's game over.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's kind of without giving too much away, that's what happens. Some of the subplots are just the sibling dynamics of them really not getting along, and how do you deal with sibling rivalry while you're trying to save the world? One of them, the oldest brother's a partier. He's out drinking or whatever. Um, the middle child is like, golden child. And the youngest one has a pretty sizable anxiety disorder.
Hmm.
And for him, it's you kind of how does he deal with this?
Yeah.
Where he's afraid of so many things, especially death. And now he is facing off with someone who could very easily kill him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's
so
amazing because chapter one starts off with this um, classic teenage angst and then battling each other. Really, it starts off like that. But interesting that you talked about the youngest. Is it Calvin, the youngest? His dad throws him in a karate class, to try and what's the word? Build him up, make him stronger, make him
yeah,
tougher.
yeah.
I think that's the sort of thing. Did you find that coming to your martial arts experience now? So you practice Brazilian jiu-jitsu, don't you? That's kind of
Yes.
another passion of
As
yours.
best I can, at least.
Yeah, yeah, we all do as best we can. Do you find that that's had an influence on the way that you write? I mean, for me, I'm having practiced and studied karate for too many years than I care to remember. Um, a lot of it, I find a lot of the discipline that the kind of martial arts gives you comes into my writing. Do you find this, a similar sort of idea come through?
I think for me, the biggest thing is it's helped me write
Yeah.
Calvin. Uh, because yeah, you do have that. One of the things that I've learned in doing jujitsu and that my sensei has taught me, it's like, okay, your issue is confidence.
Hmm.
You have the ability, you need to discover the confidence. And that becomes a factor with the Calvin character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the experience itself leads me to be able to write the characters better.
Hmm.
Um, and it also gives me, better visuals for fight scenes. It's like, oh, I'm gonna try this,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it's gonna do this to that person.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it makes it, I don't know about you, but I found it makes it easier to write those fight scenes
Yes.
because there is that element of visualization in the martial arts that comes along with it. You can just see it. And so you're just kind of dictating what your mind's telling you.
And if you've had it done to you, you know how painful it is. So you can describe it.
Only too well. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it does make those kind of scenes easy to write, and of course a lot more descriptive and probably
Yeah.
more immersive for the reader as well. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I was going really with that, just to see how it had affected and influenced your writing. And like me, I couldn't agree more. It has given you that, and me, it's given me that clarity to be able to write those kind of fight scenes, and that's really nice. So. I'm going to ask you for a spoiler now. Does Calvin get any better? Does he start to like doing his karate because he hates it in from chapter one?
Sort of.
Yeah, okay, that'll do. That's good
Yeah.
enough. That's plenty good enough. I like that.
I would just say he grows. He grows as a character.
Yeah, yeah. That's well. Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. And so again, I think that's where the sort of martial arts makes you grow as a character. It's character building, if you like, in that respect. That's fantastic. All right, so. Um, you've got plans for more of them in the series because this is book one, isn't it? Eye of Destiny is book one. Was it the Starling Chronicles? That's their surname, isn't it, Starling?
Yes. Yeah.
So have you got others in the works or planned for?
Yeah. So I'm planning for it to be a 3 or 4 book series, depending on where I am able to end with book two.
Yeah.
That's in the works right now. I'm about 150 pages in.
Wow.
So that's really exciting because again, 10 years versus, I've been working on a few months and I'm that far in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be about 3 or 4 books. And yeah, I'm excited. I really am. And to see them, it's been fun too, because I spent about a good year editing this one. And once I started writing for the second one, I had forgotten what it felt like to just create on a blank page.
Yeah. Yeah.
How incredible it feels.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't mind editing. I do enjoy it up to a point. Well, I enjoy it most of the time until you have your proof copies of your book and you keep finding errors
Yeah,
until you're
yeah,
finally sick of your book.
yeah.
Um, but just being able to have a blank page and create a brand new world um, is just so incredibly fun and fulfilling. Um, so yeah, I'm probably three. I'm hoping for three, but probably will be four again, depending on where I get with this one. I think one of the things with we were talking earlier about writing the second book is
Mm,
you have some direction, but you've revealed or you've created all this mystery in your first
mhm,
book, and
mhm.
you have to remember it all so that you answer some of it in the next books.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's, anyone who says writing a book is easy has probably not written a book. I think sometimes. So, do you know the end then? The end of the story? Yeah, do you
I
know what?
do.
I'm the same. I know the end of the story. So now I'm sort of working towards getting there. So, my next question then would be, has your ending changed since you finished your first book? Has it evolved a bit?
I think I've gotten different ideas,
Right. Yeah, that's probably
but
better.
largely the main kind of ending few scene ideas that I have
Yeah.
stayed largely the same, but getting there and like, okay, how is it gonna, go has changed. It's
Mm.
kind of like, okay, this is the plot point. And originally I thought, okay, it's gonna work this way. It's like, no, same plot point, but now we're probably gonna do it this way.
Yeah, yeah. So do you, and so also I'm thinking about you were talking earlier on about Star Wars and Star Trek and all that sort of, particularly Star Wars, where we've now got these kind of offshoots, different specific characters that have got their own film series or whatever. Is there an opportunity for that in your series? Because there is for mine. I've got all of these characters, and they all have their own stories that could be written. Is that something that you would consider as well?
I hadn't really thought about it. It's probably a possibility. One thing I was actually, how life just throws stuff at you with writing. I was
Mm.
at someone's baseball game, um, and I was thinking to myself, what's it going to be like after all the adventures are done for these guys?
Yeah,
And I started planning almost a kind of a post novella, in first person instead of third person,
yeah,
but Walker, and kind of like what does his life become or whatever after that.
yeah.
So I think so. I don't know that so much in between the books because they kind
Mhm.
of they kind of really just go straight, straight through time. There's not really a break in time. But I would say, kind of post afterwards, um, there could be a few little things that kind of continue the story without necessarily having to write 400 pages for each one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Again, it's just something that I thought of as well because I thought, okay, so one of my characters, Fede Vasquez, he's got a great backstory, and I know the backstory; it's all in there. So I'm thinking, oh, that's really interesting. That would make an interesting, maybe just a
Yeah.
novella or even a short
Oh
story
yeah. Yeah.
potentially. So yeah, I was kind of thinking that, which is why I asked because I think when you've got some strong characters, then your readers are going to want to find out more about them and of course, then that's an ideal opportunity to write about them at that point.
That's true. Yeah.
I was talking the other day, once you've finished it, your series is complete and it's done, and there are your books, whether there's three or four, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, right, so what do I do now? I'm just wondering what that's going to feel like because I've got another book to write that comes in to finish my trilogy. But I'm trying to wonder, I'm beginning to wonder what that's actually going to feel like. Is it going to feel empty? Am I going to feel like I've done a good job? Am I going to feel like, I should do more? So yeah, it's really interesting. And I hadn't thought about that until my second book's going to come out in a couple of weeks' time. And then I've just got the one more to write. That may be a year, but what do I do after that? I mean, I have plans or ideas and sort of that I would like to write some horror. into a different genre potentially. And that's not to mix things up. It's just an interest that I've got, having started to read some horror, which I hadn't done before. I hadn't read a Stephen King book, which I just didn't until I talked to my daughter about it before Christmas, and she bought me two. So I'd started to read some horror, and that's kind of interesting because we were saying earlier on, as I said, I think there is this crossover, this blending of genres
Right.
in your story, and there's quite a bit of horror in mine. I actually quite enjoyed writing it. There's a martial arts element to it as well, but there's also that grisly side. Whether or not that's part of my personality, I don't know. I hope not. But you know, it's potentially there, and there could be a book in that. So yeah, maybe for me, that's where it's going to go. Your characters, then, the three brothers and the dad, are they based on anybody that you know?
No, they're more based on like so I have my brother is actually 20 years older than me, and I absolutely love him. But we never got to grow up together.
Right.
You know, that's kind of that's I almost feel like I kind of missed out on that.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of wished that I had, you know, brothers that I actually grew up with. And so this is
Mm.
me vicariously
Yeah.
like creating brothers that I would, you know, yeah, have grown up with.
Right.
Again, that's not to knock my brother, who I do have. I absolutely love him, and you know, he's awesome. But it's a different dynamic when, you know, your brother's an adult when you're first born.
Sure.
So, you know, you always kind of wonder, you know, functionally only child, what would it be like to not be? And of course, everyone that has siblings is like, no, you don't want
You don't
siblings.
want to be.
um, um, so yeah.
That's so. I mean, that's really nice when you've got the kind of idea. I suppose you are really creating, as you said, a sort of a family, in addition to your real family as well. So
Yeah.
you've lived through those, which is really nice. The cover design for the book, because you got the three brothers on the cover. I really like the cover. I know it's behind you there. Can you grab it so we can sort of get a closer look at it? Yeah, I really like the cover. So the three, well, did you design that yourself, or did you have someone design it for you?
Oh no, I'm not this artistic.
No, that's good. Me neither. Yeah,
No, I worked with a cover designer.
yeah. So, and the three guys that are on there, are they? Did you work with the designer to come up with those characters, or did he or she just say, "Look, this is what I can see from the story. How do they fit with how you see the brothers?"
So the cover designer gave me like a question sheet of,
Right.
you know,
Oh, okay. Mm,
a really good amount of questions.
mm,
So I described, you know, some of the scenes. I described some of, you know, what I gave them the character descriptions, and then I actually I went online and I searched, you know, for either actors I thought, you know, kind of resembled them, or even a friend of mine. I took his picture because I'm like, when I met him, I'm like, you were this character. And so I sent that. I also sent, you know, cover styles that I liked, and I said, you know, I want the three brothers on the cover.
yeah.
Um, you know, they're half Cuban, so try to get, you know, try to make them look half Cuban or something. And yeah, so from there, he sent me this back, which, you know, is really cool because, you know, their secret base that they have, this organization, is underneath a train station.
Right.
It's like hidden underneath. And so he actually, cover designer actually got like a railway in the background. You know, and the symbol here is, this is what's on their suits. It's a bird in a circle. It's, you know, because their last name is Starling. So
Sure.
Starling. Yeah. Haha,
Yeah.
I'm so clever. Yeah, but I will say I was floored when I saw the cover, because I'm like, this is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
We made a few tweaks, but this is basically what it was originally. So yeah, I will definitely work with them again.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's atmospheric. Considering that you haven't got the guy sort of looking straight ahead, it's really nice, and they still have that kind of typical teenage angst feel about it as well. That's really good. So, what are you writing now? Are you writing the second one to this, or is this another story that you're working on?
So I'm writing the second of this book. I'm also finishing up a novella called Locked Away, which is um, not so much sci-fi as it is more mystery.
Hmm.
Basically, the character Oliver, he's a college student and he gets kidnapped by someone who is claiming to be his dad,
Wow.
uh, but really seems more like a lunatic. Um, and so, in the story, it's like, okay, how does he escape? How does he survive in the midst of this ordeal? And that's actually going to be a free story. If you subscribe to my newsletter on my website, probably come June, I'll be sending that out, and that'll be exclusive to the newsletter. So sign up for my waiting
Yeah,
list.
I was going to say, once you've got that sorted out, please let me know and I'll add it into the description so people can then come along and sign up straight away, which is great. Yeah, we'll do that. I'll add all of the links into the description as well, so people can go to your website and make contact with you on social media, etc., etc. So yeah, it'll be easy for people to reach out. But yes, please let us know once that's available, and then we can have that added in, which is kind of the important thing. So, where is Eye of Destiny available right now?
Is available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle, softcover, and then also Kindle Unlimited.
Right. Okay. Good. Okay. So yeah. So people, it's easy to get hold of. That's the important thing. And are you going to add all of the others on Kindle? And are you going to go sort of? I know you're on Kindle Unlimited, so it kind of sort of forces your hand to stay there for a while. But would you put it wide, like what Barnes and Noble and the other places, like a lot of other writers do?
Probably, yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of in the works.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So when can we expect then the second book to come out? I'm just gonna
Um,
now. I'm going to put you on the spot. Give me a time.
I'm really aiming for next year. I'm aiming for
Okay.
2025.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. You said you're about what 150 pages in?
Yeah, so that's about a quarter of the way through. I mean, we're
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So there you go. So you'd have written it in a year as opposed to 10. So that's
yes.
really good.
Right?
And the cover design, because I already knew when I wrote my second book, I already knew what the second cover was going to look like. Are you the same? Do you have an idea of what it was going to look like already?
I have colors in mind,
Okay.
um, but not quite. No, maybe kind of some thoughts, but not really a firm like it has to look like this or something.
Mhm. Wow, so that's fantastic. Well, listen, I think so everyone will have access to all of your links from the description below. So let's leave it there for today. But what I would like to do is to ask you to let me know, as I said, once you've got everything else coming out, so that we can let everybody know that there's more work available from Tommy Lee Sexton. So
Absolutely.
let's have that. Please let me know when that's in. Tommy Lee, thank you so much for coming today. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you, to talk about Eye of Destiny and what you've got coming up next. And it's a real pleasure to speak to another sci-fi writer. So thank you very much for coming.
Same here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And I hopefully speak to you again soon.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on another captivating episode of the Page Turnerz podcast. We hope you enjoyed delving into the pages with us, discovering new stories, and revisiting beloved classics. If you're as passionate about books as we are, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback keeps us bringing you fascinating discussions, author interviews, and book recommendations. Remember, the adventure never ends when you have a book in hand. Until next time, keep turning those pages and let the magic of storytelling continue to inspire your imagination. Happy reading.